Okay. Hey, we're going to try one more time. She just logged on to her phone. And, this is just life sometimes, right? Like things just don't exactly go according to plan all the time. And so we just have to have a little bit of grace and some patience and figure it out, right? So, okay, so let's see if we can, third time might be a charm, Brianne. Okay, bring them on camera. Video. Yes, Brianne Grebil wants to be in your video. Approve. Okay. Let's see if this works. This is the first time I've ever done this, and the first time Brianne's ever done this.
Yay!
Brianne, hi! How
All right.
are you?
I'm good. I don't know if it was something on my computer or...
It could be. I think it might be. It has to be on a phone, which I didn't know before.
Well,
so who knows?
Learn something new every day.
Exactly. I was like, I was a little bit worried about this, but I was like, nah, like it'll be fine and we'll figure it out. Sometimes life just happens that way, right?
Right. And now I'm trying to prop up my phone so that
right.
I'm seeing what do I got in my drawer that I could prop it up with? I got this.
Right.
I can make this work.
Absolutely. I was going to plug in my phone and then I was like, oh no, I can't plug it in and prop it up at the same time.
I know. So I got my headset in and I'm trying to.
Right.
Okay. I think. Whoa.
Oh, there we go. Looking great.
Now we'll just see how long the battery lasts.
I know, right? Oh my gosh. So, everybody, guys, I'm so glad you're joining in. This is Brianne Grebil. I'm so excited to have her on the Connection Project. This is episode 2, you guys, so super, super fresh for me. She is an alumni of this world. She has her own podcast called A Clear Life, which I have been obsessively listening to over the last couple of weeks. And I found her on Instagram. You get into the social media world and you have all these ideas and okay, I'm going to start trying to collaborate with other people. So I reached out to her. I told her what I was doing in this new project that I was really passionate about and asked her if she wanted to be involved. And she said yes. So
I was like, anything called the Connection Project, I'm on board with. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was so awesome. So we talked for the first time about a month ago on the phone. That was a fantastic conversation. And then just trying to get our schedules to line up to do this episode. And I'm just so stoked about this. I don't know what other introductions I can add to it, but so let me just start off by asking you, Brianne, introduce yourself, what kind of work you do, and we'll go from there.
Well, thanks. I'm glad we get to do this finally, and finally we got the tech worked out.
I know, right?
I just logged on, and you're like, you logged off, and I'm like, no, we're gonna try this one more time.
Right? I was like, maybe we'll come up with some other technology.
Third time's a charm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm a transformative life coach, and what that means is I help people. I'll describe it differently every single time I talk about my work, but today what I'll say is I help people have a deeper understanding of the mind and how the mind works to create our experience. And when you have that deeper understanding of what's going on in your world, then things just get a hell of a whole lot easier. Is the abridged version, because I find most people, when we're struggling, when we're suffering, when we're having a hard time, it's because we're not clear on what it is that we're experiencing. We're kind of caught up in our heads instead of being kind of present with what is. And so I kind of help people kind of see the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the work you do is beyond important, and it's at the forefront of where we are in society and where we need to be headed, and kind of like trying to understand where we come from and processing our experiences in a more healthy way, and honestly in a way that makes more sense to the human nature that makes up who we are, so that we can go forward and continue to expand and continue to be better and experience life on a higher level. So I'm so excited that there are people like you that are doing this kind of work. So one of my first questions is, how did you get into this work? Like, heard all of this.
Accidentally.
Yeah. Isn't that always the way,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's just every time I talk to somebody, they're like, well, I kind of just like fell into this because of X, you know,
Yeah.
like,
I came through it, oddly enough, through skincare.
really?
Yeah. I had really bad acne for many, many years. Through my own experimentation and trying to, help my skin get clear, trying to do the abridged version, the short version.
Right.
Right. So I learned about skincare products and things like that. And then I understood like, oh, well, overall health has something to do with it too. So I became a nutritionist and a personal trainer. And so help people physically be healthy, which contributes to clearer skin. But then I understood like, oh, well, stress ties into this as well. So even if you're eating right, if you're super stressed about your skin, that's going to contribute. Right. And then through all this whole journey, like I began to see like, well, even when my skin was clear, it didn't necessarily make me happy. And even though I'm helping my clients have clear skin, that doesn't really move the needle. It does kind of temporarily because we get so caught up in the idea of like, once this thing is fixed, everything's going to be fine. Like once I have clear skin, then I'm going to be confident, then I'm going to feel beautiful, then I'll be able to, and I just found that just wasn't the case. That's not true. Right. And so I kind of started exploring that for myself. Like, well, what is that missing element? What is the missing thing where we're always kind of externally looking for the thing that will satisfy us, but always coming up short? And so through that exploration myself, I kind of started finding some very solid answers, and then I could actually give those to other people. And that's so I started just helping people with their skin, and then it started turning into just this whole life thing.
Yeah. Isn't that always, I mean, like every time you start with one question and you start exploring it, and it's like the one question turns into a quasi answer, which then creates more questions. And then the deeper and deeper and deeper you go into this rabbit hole of this experience that we call life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, really cool. So, the Connection Project, and my goal is to connect people on a more real level, on a more authentic level. And connectivity can apply to so many things. First and foremost, in my experience, it's the connection to self, right? And the understanding of who we are and how we experience our life as we see it from our perspective. If we don't understand that first, then there's no way that we can have authentic connections and relationships with other people. And I notice, and please tell me your opinions on this, in this day and age, there's social media and there's technology and there's cell phones and there's all kinds of things that create a connection with us and the world around us. But, and tell me if I'm wrong, the statistics that I know is that there's higher rates of depression, higher rates of suicide, higher rates of mental illness, and physical disease as well. Why do you think that is? Like, what is something that's like missing in all of the technology tools that we have that prevents us from really like fulfilling what's the need there to connect with other people?
Well, I don't know. Because to me, like the technology, and this is, I don't have the right answers, but this is the way I see it, right?
Right. Nobody does.
Right.
This is not like a end all be all at all. This is just through the work that you've done.
Yeah. Because it seems to me like the technology it's neutral. It's a thing, right? It exists. It's a tool. So a lot of people I know think that the technology is creating a void. It's creating a gap. It's creating a disconnect. But to me, it's if you've already got that connection already, you call it a connection to yourself, or there's lots of different ways to talk about it. Then again, it's just a tool. Like I get to use technology to connect to people all over the world.
Right. Like right now.
Right. Which is the most amazing thing. But you're right. I think it's what we kind of miss. The missing link in my world is that we have a misunderstanding of where that feeling of connection comes from. Like, because, I like that you call this the Connection Project, and you could talk about this in a million different ways, but I feel like we're all kind of looking for something else. And you could call it connection. You could call it a lot of different things, but I like the word connection. And if you don't have an understanding of where that actually comes from, what it actually is, what it's actually made of, you're going to look outside of yourself for it. And then you will always feel like something is missing. You're going to look for connection in the wrong relationship. You're going to look for connection in my business has to be the right size. You're going to look for connection in possessions. You're going to look for connection in all these different things. Whereas if you already have that sense of connection, which is innate in my world, then what you do with it is that's just the icing on the cake. That's the fun part of being a human being. That's the right. That's the, I already feel pretty solid. I already feel pretty good. Now, who do I want to reach out to? What do I want to do with my time? And, you know, but there's a missing piece there that we either misattribute that sense of connection to something outside of us, or we don't even really go looking for it in the sense that, you know, that's what my work is. It's like, well, what is it? Because once you see it, then the rest is gravy.
Yeah, absolutely. Which totally leads me into my next question. You know, like, I think sometimes people don't really understand what exactly is missing. So when people come to you for help, and they come to you to kind of transform, I know I've listened to a lot of your podcasts and the work that you do. And as far as the transformational life coach, and that description can change as you talk about it, and depending on the day.
I don't have a nice little label for what I do. I wish I did.
Right, exactly. You know, but what is the question or the issue that most people have when they're coming to you for help? They're like, okay, I'm at a place in my life where I need X, and I've tried all these other things. So, okay, I think Brianne can help me. What's that conversation like? What do you see most often?
Well, you know, it's funny in that in one sense, it's the same conversation no matter what somebody comes to me with, regardless of what they think their issue is or what they think they want to achieve. So in one sense, it's always the same conversation. It's just depending on the individual, it's how that kind of gets expressed.
Got it. Yeah.
But we tend to think that we live, like the essence of the conversation I have with people is having a deeper understanding of what the human experience is. Yeah. Which some people are like, that sounds either really cool or like way existential or whatever. How on earth?
They're like, what?
Like that either sounds really cool or really weird. Yeah.
Right.
So what's the value in that? And it's because, you know, for who knows, maybe all of human history, I don't know. We've been living under the misunderstanding that we live in an external world. Meaning, and in one sense I do, my physical body is definitely moving through time and space. In that sense, that's true.
Right.
But the world we live in is completely psychological. Like we only ever live inside of our own minds. We can't have an experience of anything without our minds being involved.
Yeah.
And so the work I do is I help people see that. Like, so if somebody comes to me and says, no, the problem is my relationship. If somebody comes to me and says, the problem is my relationship, I'm not going to disagree, but I'm going to help them see, can you see how the relationship is perpetuated by thoughts that you have going on inside of your head? Right? You have to be able to see that, because if you think the relationship is broken because of him, you're operating from the misunderstanding that your own mind has to be involved in the process to even understand what he is doing. Right. And that's the missing variable that nobody really even looks at, because once you see what your mind is doing, then it's now you're dealing with a different kind of reality. Now you're dealing with something truer than what you were dealing with before.
Right.
So
absolutely,
it's, you know, it's, and if like using relationships as an example is a fun one because most of us can relate. Yeah. It's like, it's a, can you see how, you know, for example, my fiance might say something one day and it really frustrates me, like rubs me the wrong way. And is just like, that was so insensitive, or doesn't he understand? And the next day he might say the exact same thing in the exact same manner, in the exact same tone. And I just don't care.
Right.
Right. So that points to, it's not what he says, what he does. It's that in that moment, my thoughts are perpetuating something.
Yeah.
And so it's first helping somebody see that. And then the next thing is helping them understand the nature of how thought works.
Yeah.
And then it's some people are really on board when we start working together. Like, this sounds amazing. I'm like all on board. And some people are just like, okay.
Right? Like I was listening to your most recent podcast about how the mind is directly connected to the physical body and how it can manifest illness and vice versa, and how modern medical fields, doctors and psychologists, they separate the two, right?
Yeah.
They take the head away from the body and just treat that, or they take the body away from the head and they just treat that, you know. And some people are really resistant to the idea when somebody says, well, you need to go to a therapist, or they're in therapy and they're having physical manifestations of their thoughts in a negative way, and they're like, we need to go talk. People have a tendency to get defensive because, in my opinion, somebody's telling them, well, this is your responsibility. You know, this has everything to do with what's going on up here and not a lot to do with what's going on out there. And once you remove the ability for somebody to place blame on somebody else or something else, that can make everybody's walls go up. Their
Absolutely.
defenses go up. They're like, whoa, hang on a second.
Yeah.
This is because of that. This is because my boss didn't do this, or my husband or my wife didn't do this. This has nothing to do with me, you know. And the ego starts to flare and all of that stuff, and they're completely resistant to the idea. But if you just work with them a little bit, and I'm sure if you've experienced this, once you can shed the ego, soften that ego just a little bit, it becomes a very empowering idea.
Well, it's not even, you know, I try to tell people, like, you know, if somebody's kind of new to seeing this, it can be misunderstood that, okay, so the trick is to control my mind.
Right.
Oh, so first, yeah, there's a lot of resistance of like, oh, you're saying this is my fault. And the first thing was like, it's like, no. It's like, it is an innocent thing. It is an innocent thing that we do with our minds because we weren't shown that this is how the mind works. We're living in a society that everybody is saying it's outside in, meaning everybody is saying, you know, happiness comes from these things, or relationships should look like this, and if it doesn't look like that, that's a problem, or, you know, you should look this way. Like, so we are bombarded with the message of our experience is out there. Like, some things are out there. They can go into my mind, cause me to feel things.
Right.
So because that's the way it looks like it works, it can be a real, like, that's the first hurdle to get people over is, can you see it's actually the other way around?
Other way around, yeah.
That everything out there things are happening, right?
Yes, of course.
Right. But it's all, for lack of a better word, I use neutral, but it's things and stuff and events and situations and circumstances. It's a blank white canvas.
Right.
And then our minds get involved, whether that's from our conditioning growing up or societal standards or culture or what our parents said, or for some arbitrary reason, our minds get involved and start painting that blank canvas with, this is right, this is wrong. I should do this, I shouldn't do that. I'm the person who can do this, who can't do that. And that's what kind of creates our experience.
Absolutely.
So the first hurdle is helping somebody, and I have so much compassion because for some people, it's this beautiful, eye-opening, awakening thing, and for some people, it's extremely jarring.
Yeah.
Because it's like it messes with your sense of reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a total contradiction from everything that we've been taught our whole life sometimes. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
If you've never had any kind of understanding of how the mind works and how you are in control of how you perceive different situations, it can be life altering. And
yeah. And you know, I was going to say that the next thing I help people see is, like, you know, we talk about it as the ego, which I'm fine with that word. But another kind of missing piece to me in the personal development or the self-help world, and again, it's an innocent thing, is then the next thing is like people begin to see that and they go, oh, so let me control my mind so that I can control my experience. So let me have positive thoughts, and let me you know, push away the negative ones. And so to me, then all that's happens is you've gone from trying to control the external world to now you're trying to control the internal world. And to me, that's just as exhausting.
It can be, yeah. So actually, I listen to Abraham Hicks a lot. I'm not sure if you have heard of
Yeah,
Abraham
I'm
Hicks.
familiar. Yeah.
And I love listening to those videos and the perspective that it gives me and all of that stuff. But that is a lot of the message, is control what goes on here and you'll be able to manifest that in your external world. So how does what you do differ from that? Like when you say, okay, you can't control the outside, I think everybody that does this kind of work knows that. Then when you say, okay, so the next logical step is, well, let me control my thoughts. And you're like, okay, well, that's really just as exhausting. What are your thoughts on how to make the connection from inside to out? Because you use the phrase inside out a lot, which I love that, because I really think that's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
How do you overcome those negative feelings when you're in them?
So to me, this is the real missing thing that allows life to just become so much smoother and so much easier. Right. Is that if you have a deeper understanding of what the nature of thought is, mm-hmm. you no longer fear the negative experiences because you know they're thought. Right? We've become very afraid of our own emotions. My mentor, Michael Neal, calls it emotophobia.
Yes.
We've become afraid, like we've somehow gotten the idea that as human beings, what we're supposed to feel all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Like if things are going well, that means my life is well. If I'm feeling well, that means my life is well.
Right.
But what we've innocently done is now we have taken the entire spectrum of human emotion that we get to experience, and we've said, these are the good ones and those are the bad ones.
Right.
But if you see the bad ones there's nothing to fear inside of those bad experiences, those bad feelings. You just get to feel them. Well, then you can it's almost like you get to see life as a show instead of like a wrestling match.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I use the experience of a very, very personal thing is, my mom has Alzheimer's. And had I not already had like a deep grounding in this understanding beforehand, this would have really effed up my world. I was like, can I swear?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have to say it.
Okay.
Don't be shy.
Like, this would have really fucked up my world even like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But now, because I understand, like, pain is a package deal of the human experience.
It is.
Like, we're trying so hard to avoid it or push it away or, like, you're alive when you feel stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And pain it can be a beautiful thing too.
Yeah.
Like there's something else on offer. Like, when I look at my mom and, she's confused and frustrated and she doesn't know who she is, let alone where she is.
Right.
We had this moment where, she was up all night crying because she didn't know where she was or who she was. I can only imagine how terrifying that is.
Extremely. Yeah.
But because I was willing to be there with her in that experience, would I choose something different if I could? Yeah, but guess what? I don't get to. Mm-hmm. And so there was something very beautiful about being with my mom in that moment.
Right. And I'm holding space for her.
I'm not afraid to be in pain. I'm not afraid to be upset. I'm not afraid to have a negative experience because my experience is created by thought. Right. And so my experience is created by me going like, oh, my poor mother, that has to be terrifying. This sucks. I hate this so bad. Those thoughts are creating my shitty experience.
Sure.
But so what?
Right.
Right. I'm not going to sit there and go like, try to put a bow on the experience or just try like, oh, I'm just not going to think that stuff. It's like, no, whatever I'm present with, including my shitty experience.
Right.
But I'm also, because thought, the very nature of thought is that it comes and it goes. Mm-hmm. Like within an hour, she had kind of come out of it. She was laughing. I got to laugh with her.
That's so awesome.
Right? The shitty experience was there because I was thinking about it. Because thought goes on its own, thought went on its own, and then the new experience replaced it.
Right.
Like our experience will always be replaced by something different. Once like thought, like even the negative ones, even the things we hate, they will disappear if you're not clinging on to them.
Yes.
They do it on their own. There's like literally, I don't have to be involved in that process at all. The nature of thought is that it goes on its own and a new one will replace it. So that's kind of why, like, it's hard when people first start coming to me. It's because we've been trained that life takes work. And I'm literally showing people, I'm like, no, 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 no. If you understand how it works, there's literally no work to do. You just get to enjoy it.
You just experience, it's like the nature of being human is just, you will by default experience as you move through time and space.
Yeah.
And your brain will work and your heart will work and all of the things will work. And there's not a whole lot that you have to consciously do. And what we end up consciously doing is what we're taught, right, by society and our parents and different experiences. And we develop these fears and anxieties and all kinds of things. But if you can let those go for just a second, there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of freedom in that.
Freedom, like when I started seeing this for myself, and I was a little dense, it took me a while. Like, because I kept trying to turn this into a strategy, right? Into like, okay, so what's the technique? What's the strategy? I hear you. That sounds great, but what do I do with that?
Right.
Once I finally saw there wasn't actually something to do.
Right.
The sense of freedom, I love that word. The sense of freedom that I began having inside of my life was way beyond the sense of freedom I thought I would have once my mind and life was sorted out.
Right.
When I was living in that paradigm of like, oh, once these things out there are in place, I'll feel better. And then I was under the paradigm of like, oh, once I finally get a hang of like positive thinking, then my life will be better. Then I'll feel free.
Right.
Once I saw like, oh, you don't have to do any of that. The sense of freedom I got was way beyond. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Oh, this is good stuff.
Right. Exactly. And it's like, even Abraham Hicks talks about positive thinking, but don't think about it too much. You need, and people are like, well, okay, so like I get that my negative thoughts create my reality, and I get that my positive thoughts create reality. So now I have to just make sure that I'm thinking positive thoughts all the time. And she's like, no, it's not that complicated. She's like, just being able to release the resistance of overthinking, and just allowing things to come and go. Like, my therapist described it as a river, and just being the observer of your own life and having these thoughts and feelings come and go, and these leaves falling in the river, and you can jump in and try to gather them all up and line them up in a row on the bank, or you can just sit on the bank and watch them. And let them come and let them go, because they will come and they will go. And I'm just coming into all of this. My life over the last 2 years has been completely transformational through my divorce and moving and letting go of a lot of the social constructs and the familial constructs that I've grown up believing. And it's just been a wild ride. And even last night, my emotions were high. My anxiety was high. I was crying. I was feeling confused and doubt and anxiety and sadness and anger and all of these negative things. And I was like, I just have to stop focusing on them. I need to be positive. I need to be this. I need to be that. And I was like trying to like work my way out of feeling bad. And then I remembered one of your Instagram videos, and it was like, I'm feeling shitty, and that's okay. And I just kind of was like, if tonight's one of those nights where I feel shitty, okay, let's just go with that.
Well, the thing we miss, and it's not obvious to you until it's obvious, but the thing we miss is if we're feeling frustrated, angry, upset, anxious, depressed, lonely, sad, any of those things, it's because this thing is bullshitting us, if you will. That's what right? Yes. So you're kind of at your least capable of doing much in those moments. So to think like when I'm at my worst is now the time I should try to fix myself.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense to me anymore like it used to. It's like, I can't trust this thing to make a sandwich right now, let alone fix itself. Like, right? The problem, if the problem is in my thinking, to trust my thinking to go in and fix my thinking, probably not going to be that helpful.
Right. Absolutely. But that's a really good way of thinking about it.
Well, but you can be really clear with feeling shitty.
Yeah.
Like, you can, the thing I noticed, like, it was kind of a deeper level, like the last, experience I had with my mom. It was a horrible, like, I can't even describe how horrible it was to be with my mom in that moment. And then the next morning, she was doing a bit better. Her and my father went out to go visit a friend. And so I was up in Idaho visiting them. So I was in their house by myself. And I just let myself feel anything that came to me. Like, at first there was just relief, right? She was doing better. There was gratitude because she didn't remember how horrible the night was. Right? She was like, Dad asked her, how did you sleep? She's like, oh, I slept fine. I'm like, oh my God, we did not sleep fine. Right? There was also, but there was also such resentment at life. Like, how dare you do this to my mom? There was anger, there was sadness, there was grief. But the thing I noticed, and again, if I didn't have this understanding, I don't think this would have been possible, is that I was more present with my feelings than I have ever been. Like, they were just feelings. They didn't mean my life was horrible. It just meant I'm feeling something right now. And I'm calling it, fear. I'm calling it anger. I'm calling it, but I was like, and it was just, that's it. This moment sucks. Not life.
Right.
This moment sucks. And because I was okay feeling that, it's like my consciousness has expanded to an extent that, like, there's room for the shitty experiences.
Right.
Because they're inevitable, right? They're inevitable.
Of course. Absolutely.
But it's like, oh, this sucks, but it's not all consuming, right? This is heavy, but I'm not pushed to the floor.
Right.
That's the difference.
Right. Right.
Because if what you're aiming for is to be able to get through those experiences happy, no.
Right.
If what you're aiming for is to avoid those experiences altogether, you're going to either live a very, very isolated life, right, where you just shut yourself off from every possible thing that could possibly cause you pain, or you're just going to exhaust yourself trying to fend off those feelings.
Right. Right.
And it's my mentor calls it, it's not on the menu. Like, we're trying to order, like, a lot of the self-help and personal development, what we're trying to find on the menu is where I can feel better all the time.
Right.
And that's not on the menu.
Right. Absolutely. So how do you coach the people that you come across, that come into your awareness and into your experience? So we have good times and we have bad times, and we have good feelings and bad feelings, and we just have to accept that they are what they are and be willing to sit with them for a minute and let them pass. How does that relate to finding their connection to their self and then also to others? Because one of my goals with the Connection Project is to change the dynamic between people.
Yeah.
Because so many of us have a lot of really, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but in my past, I know I've experienced a lot of superficial relationships. And I know that when I'm by myself, I can kind of dig into that authentic place. But how do you think we can go about bringing that authenticity and this experience that we're talking about to our relationships with other people?
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful question because, the more I look in this direction for myself, and then the more I have the coolest job in the world is I get to point people toward this. It's the coolest job.
You really do.
It's like, oh, I'm going to wake you up like, oh, you think you're coming to me with a problem to solve. And we'll definitely do that. But what we're also going to do is we're going to wake you up to a deeper sense of being alive.
Right.
That's also on offer. Like, people don't even know that's on offer. They're like, oh, just help me fix my problem. I'm like, yeah, that and.
Right. Like, this isn't just a compartmentalizable thing here.
Right. It's like, that'll take care of itself once you have a deeper sense of being alive. And to me, like, that's the thing. Like, when you have woken up to life at I call it a deeper level, like There's not levels. Like, I don't, it's just a way to talk
like a
about
higher vibration, like a broader perspective.
All kinds of words you want to put to
Right.
it. But it's like most of us are living life at this superficial level, not even understanding that that's literally, you're skimming the absolute surface of life.
Right.
Like, to get lost in the ideas of, and it's an innocent thing. We literally, like, I do this for a living and I still get lost at that level.
Yes.
It's just,
yeah.
I just actually know there's something way more.
Yeah.
But when you're lost at that level of, my life will get better if I lose the weight, my life will get better if I have the perfect partner, my life will get better if I have the right career. When you get lost and really stuck in that level, you're going to do the best you can from there.
Right.
But when you get woken up to that deeper sense of being alive, that more like a sense of wonder and amazement and curiosity is a package deal.
Yeah.
And so you begin to see, like, but for our thinking, we are only ever connected.
Right.
But for my own ideas of who I think you are and who I think I am, but for those ideas, we're the same friggin' thing.
Yes.
So the more you, and it's a default. Like, sometimes people will come to me to work on their relationships, right? But some people come to me for all kinds of different things. The byproduct of seeing this is that you just get better at being a human, which means you get more forgiving of other people when they're stuck in that superficial level. You just naturally get more comfortable inside of your own skin, right? Because the only time anybody's going to lie to you or do you wrong or get stuck is when they're stuck there.
When they're stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, that's and me too, right?
Oh,
right. It's
absolutely.
I'm not an enlightened human being by any stretch of the imagination. If I'm in a funky mindset and somebody cuts me off, I'll probably curse them.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
But I don't live there anymore. It's just, and that's just, it's just it is most of us are living at that superficial level because we don't know there's something else available.
Absolutely. So as somebody like you and like me who are kind of, I'll venture to say that I'm awakened to the broader experience of being a human and really diving into that and understanding what that means for me personally. And you once you do that, now you're in a place where, okay, like you're kind of reevaluating like a lot of the relationships that you had before, like what is adding value, what isn't adding value. And you start to kind of understand that maybe some of the people that you cared about so deeply before, these relationships that really mean to you, aren't providing what you now need as this awakened individual, right? How do you navigate through those relationships where just from my experience, I don't know how to explain it really without sounding cocky and then I don't want to come across as that at all, but all of a sudden your priorities shift and what's important to you shifts when you start understanding that there's a much deeper experience to be had. How do you bring that to the table to people that are in your life that aren't quite there yet?
Well, see, that would be, if this were a coaching session, that would be a deeper exploration because there's still a part of you that thinks your experience comes from people outside of you.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because when, like, the more you see this, the more cut and dry things kind of get, for lack of a better phrase.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
When I'm settled down, when I'm feeling connected, what somebody else does or says or how they want to live their life has nothing to do with me and my experience.
Right.
So they get to have their experience and I get to have compassion for them and I get to love them. And it has nothing to do, like, it cannot affect me.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean, like, a lot of people go like, well, so if somebody's in an abusive relationship, right? And they have
always the extreme,
right? Always the extremes. Like, okay, so what you're saying is like, oh, if I get this clarity or whatever, then I'm going to be okay with somebody like verbally or physically abusing me. Absolutely not.
No, yeah,
right.
Not what we're saying, but yeah.
In my mind, we all have an innate and a very clear common sense.
Sure.
right? Common sense would say if somebody is physically hurting me, I'm going to leave.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But thought is the thing that gets involved, that makes it muddy, that makes it complicated, that makes it sticky.
Right.
Right? So when you have a deeper understanding of your own personal experience, there's just things to do or not do, things to say or not say. But that stuff is literally your wisdom in the moment.
Right.
So when you're clear, you'll know what to say when you need to say it. You'll know what to do when you need to do it. Like I can't, the thing that frustrates most people is like, I rarely ever tell anybody what to do.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you know what? You actually already know. You just don't see it.
You're not tapped
Like,
into
yeah, your
that.
wisdom, like we all have this tailor-made wisdom.
Yeah.
You can call it intuition. You can call it instinct. I don't care what you call it.
Sure.
But it's tailor-made for you in any specific moment.
Right. Right.
So there would be a moment, like, right? It's when you understand, like, oh, just because he says that doesn't mean I have to get upset. That will change how you show up in that moment. So it will occur to you to say something different.
Yeah.
Right? So if my fiance says something that pisses me off, to the extent I think it's his fault, what's going to occur to me is to get mad or bring up other instances where this happened, or, question our future together. Or, right? But to the extent I can see, like, oh, I'm just stuck up in my head and I'm taking this personally. He's probably just having a bad day too. There's either just nothing to say at all. There's just moving on. There's maybe, hey babe, are you okay today? You seem a little off. Like, who knows? It's for that moment.
Right. Right.
So like when people say like, so what do I do about these relationships? I don't know, but I know you do.
Right. 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 Absolutely. And sometimes I think people get caught up, like you said earlier, and feeling good all the time. And so when somebody says something that really kind of sets you off, that really pushes one of your buttons, our instinct pre the knowing, right, is to fix it, to address it, to say, well, that really bugged me, and dive in, well, why did you say that, and analyze all the things about it, and sometimes you just need to hear it and be like, it kind of bugged me, to have really probably has nothing to do with me, and move on. And then all of a sudden the conflict diminishes, your negative feelings diminish. And if you're just in charge of your own experience next to somebody and not mixing their experience up with our experience, then all of a sudden, even though it seems counterproductive or counterintuitive to this idea of connection, you become more connected.
You become way more connected.
Right? Because you're
coming from a place of connection. Yeah, right. Exactly.
You're not creating separation through perceived conflict, because you're just like, I'm in charge of me and he's in charge of him, and he might have been having a bad day. And like you said, like totally just transforming the way you see what you once thought was a problem, and understanding that it's not really a problem necessarily.
Yeah.
Right?
I had a mentor say one time, and it really resonated with me. He's like, when we're talking to people, the vast majority of the time, we're not talking to people. We're talking to our own ideas about people.
Right.
So I have an idea, for example, of who you are, what you want from me, where you might be going. I'll have all these ideas of what I think is true. And I'm most of the time, like if I'm the average human, I'm speaking to that.
Right.
I don't even see you. I see my ideas of you.
Right.
Right. And that's, on the grand scale of things, that's like, the racial issues we're having, the political issues we're having is like all of that is we are stuck in the concepts we have made up for each other and not actually seeing the human underneath it.
Yes. And I think that hits the nail on the head with lack of connection between ourselves and who we are, because we all have perceived ideas of who we are and how we should be, and we're trying to achieve that constantly instead of really listening to that intuition, to that common sense, to that innate you know, guidance system that we're all born with, paying attention to the ideas of ourselves, and then also paying attention, like you said, to the ideas that we have of other people. If we can
Exactly.
release the ideas that we have of other people and how they should be and what they are, and what their background is and why they are acting the way that they act, and oh well, this happened 20 years ago, and then maybe we can create far more connection with our peers, with our government, with our teachers, with our parents, with our siblings, with our mates, on every scale, on all the scales, all the emotional scales and
Exactly.
everything, just to release perception, right?
Or
And
even, it's not even necessarily releasing it. It's seeing it for what it is. Like,
right,
I still have judgmental thoughts. I just don't
right,
take them seriously.
right. Or
Right?
I'm like,
I'll still think negative things. I'll still see someone and I will make a judgment, based on how they're dressed, or, I'll still do
right,
that. So I'm like, that's still a part of the package deal of being a human being.
right,
It's just,
right.
I just know I'm bullshitting. I just
I
know
think that's
that's the difference between me seeing thought and me seeing the human underneath. I can
right,
discern the difference. You don't even have to, like, again, that's kind of where people think it's work. It's like, oh, so
right,
I have to let go of all that stuff. No, you don't have to. If you can see through it, most of the time it doesn't show up anyway. And when
right,
it's there, you're
right,
just like, oh yeah, that's me doing that thing.
right. Absolutely.
It's just most
So
of us
how,
take it seriously when we have those thoughts. We believe
right,
just because it goes through my head, it must be true.
right.
And that's
It's like
that's the trick we all fall for.
oh, beyond, and it's like a belief is just a thought you have that you keep on thinking, like you just keep perpetuating these thoughts in your head that you were taught, whatever, and they become these beliefs that you have. And once you meet somebody new, and oh, they're wearing this or they're wearing that, or they said this that way, or they have these kids or live in this house or drive that car, or whatever the case may be, all of a sudden you're like, well, it's set in stone. This is just how they are.
Yeah.
And so everything they say and everything about how you interact with that person is through the lens of that judgment, is through the lens of that very superficial layer of thinking, right? And instead
Yeah.
of being able to penetrate that and being like, okay, real talk here, like like let's be, both of us be able to
Exactly.
overcome that superficial layer and get to the real stuff. So if you were to tell your client, anybody, how to, I know you don't give tips and tricks and all of that stuff, but like how do you get to that place? How did you get to that place?
Well, the biggest differentiator between my work and a lot of the other work out there is this isn't a doing, this isn't a how to, this is, do you see it?
Got it.
Because once it's like, for example, gravity is kind of
Right.
something we throw along. It's like, I know how gravity works. Therefore, you don't have to tell me, how do I not fall off the surface of the earth?
Right. It just is.
Right?
It just
I
happens.
just
Yeah.
know, like, even if I don't understand the concepts of gravity, right? Even if I don't
Okay.
understand all that, I have an innate sense of gravity.
Yeah.
So what I spend my time with my clients doing is like, I'm constantly pointing them to that, because what people will do when they come to a session is they'll want to talk about what's going on inside of their life.
Right.
They'll want to talk about the content. He said this, I did that, this is happening, this is going on, right? They'll want to talk about the content.
Mm-hmm.
And I always want
Mm-hmm.
to zoom them out and go, can you see how thought is creating that experience? Because until you see that your thought is the thing creating that, there's going to be stuff to do. So I'm always just constantly, it's kind of like people are looking this way and I'm going, no, check out over here. I'm like, that's great, but let me tell you about what it looks like. I'm like, no, check out over here. No,
Right.
no, but look over here. And then
Right.
like, I wish that there were a formula and a strategy and a moment when I know that would happen, but it is so obvious when it does. All of a sudden, things start making sense to people at a level that they didn't even realize was possible to make sense on.
Absolutely.
So it's really, it's kind of like, I mean, depending on who you are, this might sound a little woo-woo, but it's like, I'm kind of trying to expand your consciousness enough that you can see something else come through.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because we all look through this like
Yeah,
really teeny tiny little box, you know, and to be able to open up that lens. I'm a photographer as well,
yeah,
so I talk that, you know, like being able to use a telephoto lens versus a wide angle lens. It's a completely different image, you know, and
exactly.
you see this and you see this and you see this. Now, telephoto is important sometimes,
Yeah,
but most of the time, looking through that wide angle lens, it's just
yeah,
it's a
right.
completely different perspective, you know?
If you were coming to me and you're saying, I want to build a house, well, then we would get real. Like, one, I'm not the one that can help you with that, but if I could, well, then we would want to
Yeah.
really then we could strategize. Then we could then there's very specific things to do
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about, I want my experience of life to be better, well, then we have to actually talk about the nature of what the experience of life is.
Right.
We
Right.
have to go really broad. But
Yeah.
once you start getting a glimpse of it, and it's kind of like you and I have touched on this before, and you're calling it connectivity, but once you get a deeper understanding of how you work,
Right.
and by the nature, if you understand how you work, you also understand how other humans work, because we all work exactly the same.
Right.
That enhances your relationships. That makes you better at negotiating. That makes you easier to get along with. It makes you get along others with easier. That improves your work
Mhm.
environment. That includes your romantic relationships. That makes you a better stranger in the street. I mean,
Right.
like everything is smoother
Yeah.
because I remember one of the questions you first asked me is like, it's like, how do you foster, I can't remember how you worded it, but like, how do you foster connectivity and all that stuff? And it's like,
Right.
to me, feeling connected is our natural state.
Right. But we get so far away from that.
Yeah, we get caught up in here. We get lost in that
Mhm.
superficial level, right? We get lost in our own ideas about how life should be and what I should be doing and how what they should be doing. And we get stuck there and we innocently we're never not connected, but we innocently pull ourselves away from that deeper
Yeah.
sense of being alive. And
Yeah.
that when you have it, like when you're just genuinely like being alive is amazing,
It's honestly a miracle that we're
right?
born.
Being
Yeah.
alive is amazing.
Yeah.
That's as connected as you get, as far as I'm aware.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
It
Being alive.
really is.
And then so like, like kind of we touched on before, that doesn't mean like, oh, so I'm going to have this great sense of being alive and then doing nothing. Right?
Right.
It's like, no, when I'm already have a sense of being alive and then I go out to do stuff, or then I go out to meet people, or then I go out,
Right.
it's literally a different game.
It really is. And honestly, it's one of those things where it like, ugh, I just lost my train of thought, actually. I've had this really profound thing to say, you know, and then it was just, I was listening to you, and when I was listening to you, my thought completely went out of my brain. But being alive is such a miracle. There is wonder and awe and all of the things that we want, right? We want to feel curious and alive and passionate and interested and energetic and all of the things, right? And it's all right here in our space, in our existence
Yeah.
right now, you know?
Yeah.
We get caught up in what's
Exactly.
going on here. And I love what you say about how it's so innocent, because
Oh
it
yeah.
really is. You know, it really, getting caught up in what's up here, the societal expectations, the
It's
social
seductive.
constructs, the government, yeah, and our parents, it's innocent. And honestly, it all came from a very well intended place. And I think being able to recognize that and not have anger toward it,
Exactly.
you can get back to a place of connectedness to
Exactly.
self without resentment and anger and pushback and cynicism and
Yeah.
all of the other things that a lot of people do go through, you know, when they're going through this journey, you know, I mean, and honestly, it's okay to go through that. I mean, I've gone through that myself, you
Most of
know,
us
being
will.
yeah, right? Like, well, I'm angry at my parents for this, and I'm angry at blah 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 for this, and that's not a bad thing to go through as long as we don't stay there,
Yeah, well,
right?
and that's kind of what, if you understand how it works, you won't stay there.
Right,
Right? It's like
right.
you don't even like, and the reason I will always highlight the word innocent is because, a lot of times we take it from like, oh, I'm a schmuck, or I'm a failure, or I'm a whatever, because my life doesn't look like I think it should, right? That's the first thing we
Right.
do.
Right.
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 Or we get resentful or angry,
Right.
right? But then we turn it inward and we're like, oh, when we get on the self-empowerment train and the self-improvement train, well, then if things aren't going right, we turn that to ourselves, like, oh, I'm an idiot, or I'm incapable of doing this, or then now it's my fault.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good either.
No,
So that's
not at
why I'm like,
all.
no, that's literally, you have innocently got caught up in here.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that's where, when you see how innocent that is, you by default have compassion for yourself. And then when you see how easily you innocently do that for yourself, you by default have compassion for others, because you see how
Yeah.
easy it is for them to do it too.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
I was never trying to find more compassion for people, but
Mm-hmm.
good Lord, in the last 2 years of my life,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even recognize myself sometimes of how not angry I get at people, or how much
Right.
love I have for complete strangers who are doing very odd behavior.
Right.
Like, it's just opened me up to that deeper level, and that was like, I wasn't aiming for that. That just came along with
Right.
it.
Right.
I was just trying to
Exactly.
figure my shit out. That was my journey. Little did I
Yeah.
know I was gonna have like love for all of humanity come on board
All
too.
people. Yes, I know. I mean, even when I was a young girl, I even have a tattoo, love, on my back, on my shoulder. And my dad is he's a wonderful man, but he's very rigid and very logical and an engineer, and he's very far connected from his emotional experience sometimes. And I wasn't, as a young girl, so you can imagine it was just boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
constantly, and I had compassion for the homeless person on the street begging for money, and I had love for, I mean, all the thing. I mean, all you need is love. I literally said that all the time. It's like, that's it, that's it, that's it. That's where life, that is the meaning of life, all of that. And then it just gets pounded out of you at
Yeah.
time, over time. Growing up, being an adult, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to get a job, doing all the things. And then you realize, I think I was right when I was 7,
I tell all my clients who have young kids, treat your children as if they're your guru for the next 3 months and see what you learn.
Seriously, though.
They
Yes.
it's they haven't been trained away from it yet. Especially like
Exactly.
5 and under. They get it. They'll have a
They
really bad
totally
day,
get
right? And they're not trying to make themselves feel better. They'll have a really bad moment, and then 10 minutes later they're giggling and laughing as if nothing happened. That's our
right.
natural state.
It is. Yeah, and they're not pissed off that they're feeling sad. They're
Nope.
just like, I'm feeling sad right now, Mom. Like, give me a freaking break, like, just let me do this and I'll be playing Xbox in 5 minutes,
Yeah.
And now, honestly, like, we have a lot to learn from kids. They're so much more connected to who they are
Yeah.
spiritually, and to whatever you want to call it, God, source, whatever it is that you believe in. I think that children are really, really connected to that. And
Well, I had a client who, I love this example. She was talking about her 5-year-old son was out on the playground and this other kid hit him, and he got upset and cried, and 10 minutes later they were playing together as if nothing happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Constantly. Constantly. It happens like that all the time. And they know this happened, and they're more paid attention to how they feel than they are about how this other person feels. And once they feel better, they're fine.
Yep, moving
They're
on.
not moving on. I'm not caught up in why he did that, or what he felt like when he was doing that. And I don't have to fix anything. I felt bad when he hit me. I went through what I needed to go through, and now I feel fine. And that's all there is to it.
Done. And my phone battery just warned me that it's gonna die, because I forgot for a second I was on my phone. It gets propped up next to my computer.
Right? I'm having such an awesome time. Okay, so
I know.
I did write down.
I could talk about all this stuff forever.
I could too. But for the sake of everybody watching, or who's going to watch this after it's posted live later, I have some superficial, lightning round kind of ish questions.
Alrighty.
Okay, so it's honestly, one of them I got from Gary Vee. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but I love the question. Okay, so this is not it, but What's your favorite restaurant and why?
Ooh. Currently it's a chain actually. It's called Tender Greens. I think it's mostly out here in the West. And it's because they have a beautiful variety of food that's always very delicious. They try to do like locally sourced, which is kind of nice. And they are always the most pleasant people working there.
Ooh, that's a
So it's like they got everything.
major points,
Good
right?
food, affordable, good people, tasty. Like, yeah, they kind of hit all the points for me.
Awesome, right? Awesome. Okay, this is the Gary Vee question. What are you obsessed with? Like, and not, like Gary Vee tries to explain it because he wants a certain answer, which I don't think is very fair, but like it can be the new Q-tip that you're using or the sticky pads. Like, what are you obsessed with right now?
I mean, it might sound like, I don't know, like, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't even think of the word I'm looking for. I'm obsessed with these conversations.
Me too.
Like, I could talk about the nature of the human experience. If that's all I ever talked about, I would be okay.
I love it.
I'm trying to think of like something more superficial, and I'm sure there's something there. I am kind of obsessed with scarves.
Are you?
Yeah, like light scarves, heavy scarves. I'm kind of obsessed with them. Yeah.
There you go.
There's my superficial answer.
Do you like knitted ones, or do you
I just like, because I tend to dress a little drab overall. I like having color. Like the scarf is my color.
So there you go.
Something decorative, something pretty. And of course, I live in Los Angeles, so right about now, scarf weather is done.
Right.
Even the light ones.
Pretty warm. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. What's your favorite and most effective self-care routine?
I'm a big advocate of whatever feels right in the moment.
Sure.
I don't have a specific routine, but when I feel like a bath, I'm going to take a bath. When I feel like a glass of wine, I'm going to have a glass of wine. When I feel like taking a walk, I'm going to take a walk. When I feel like binging on Netflix, I'm going to binge on Netflix.
That's awesome.
Like,
it's like following the mood.
Yeah. My fiance talks about, he's in the music world. He's a musician and he's a tour manager and things. And people talk about guilty pleasures for music, like something they don't want other people to know about.
Right.
Like he doesn't want people. But in his world, he's like, I don't believe in guilty pleasures. Like, you like it, who cares? Like,
just do it.
Yeah. So it's kind of how my self-care is like, people are like, oh, you don't want to binge on Netflix because, that means you're not being productive. I'm like, no, I feel like binging on Netflix right now, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So like paying attention to self and your desires is important. Okay. If you had a spirit animal, if you believe in them, what is your spirit? What's Brianne's
I have it right here. Like, wait, let's see if I
do.
Let's see if I don't. Let's see. Let me get. This is a drawing that my fiance found for me. It's a samurai owl.
I love that.
Isn't that adorable?
Samurai. That is the cutest thing I've ever seen.
I do love owls. Like I have an owl necklace and this owl drawing, and I love owls. And so he found this for me. This is literally my spirit animal.
So awesome. Have you ever had an experience like with an owl?
No, I don't know what it is. I've actually, I think, only seen a few owls like live in my life, but there's just something I love. Their big old eyes and their mannerisms, and like you show me, like there's those videos on YouTube of like owls bathing and stuff, and I could just I could lose a day.
Right?
Yeah.
I was camping in Austin a couple weeks ago, and one of my best, dearest friends, her spirit animal is an owl too. Like she constantly has run-ins with them, interactions with them, and I hadn't. And I'm sitting here like kind of having a weird emotional day, and like we're trying to figure out our campsite, and the next thing you know, this owl swoops in at the campsite and lands on this tree right above a campsite. And I looked at my boyfriend, I was like, this is our campsite. The owl just told me. Like,
nice.
Ended up being perfect. Okay. What's your lucky number?
I don't really have one.
No?
I'm not like, I know some people are like really into numerology and stuff, and I don't really have an opinion about it. It's okay. I don't really have one. I've had a running joke since I was in high school about the number 4. That only a very, very, like 2 people would understand it. But we were in math class and the teacher was basically explaining, there was 4 different methods to do the equation. And I couldn't follow what he was doing, but he was always coming to the answer was 4.
I just got wow.
So that's a running joke, but like as far as a favorite number, I don't really have one.
That's okay. And the last but not least, what is your astrological sign?
I am a Pisces.
Ooh, that's why we're friends now. I love Pisces. One of my best friends is Pisces. And I had my astrological chart read recently, and they were like, you display as a Pisces. I'm a Cancer. So they were like, you display as a Pisces. That's why you like Pisces. And I'm like, okay, you're a Pisces.
Well, it's,
that's awesome.
That could be a whole different conversation. It's like, I used to really, really be into astrology, and I've got like Pisces stuff like on my shoulder. And now it's not on my radar anymore. Like, I love how much other people love it and how they get into it. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool. I'm like, I have it tattooed on my shoulder, but it doesn't mean anything anymore. I think it's hilarious.
Not anymore. That's okay. I mean, tattoos, they're like, they come and go, and they're just kind of like a stamp of where you were at that point.
Exactly.
Time. Awesome. Well, Brianne, thank you so much for joining me
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
It was so much fun.
Our first Facebook Live, we figured it out. Well, you're not yours, but mine, and bringing somebody on.
You know, I just love it. I could talk about this kind of stuff all day long, and I'm so grateful that you came into my life, that I reached out to you. Like, I think it matters. I love the work that you do. You guys check out aclearlife.com. She has her own website and then a Clear Life podcast. She talks about some amazing things. The most recent one being like mental health related to physical health and the manifestations that we can create in our life. And God, Brianne, you're just so freaking cool. Thank you.
You are too.
So much.
And before we get off, like, thank you for doing for this work and trying to help people find that connection and stuff, because once you have that, you're golden. So I thank you for your work and what you're doing too.
Thank you so much. Have an awesome night, and we'll connect again soon.
Yes, we will. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.